This is big. This is really big.
Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live presented by Love Pop. Excuse me for that one. Of course, sponsored by Love Pop. You can check it out on Instagram, Twitter, and their Doral location. We have a big stream for everyone here, but before we get into all the stream stuff, I wanted to dedicate at least the first just bit portion of this to the news that happened just a couple minutes ago with Hall of Famer Brooks Robinson, one of the best players of all time, easily the best defensive player in major league history, someone that revolutionized the game defensively with the Baltimore Orioles, someone that should be recognized by every player nowadays. And if you're watching this, go ahead and look at some Brooks Robinson highlights. It'll definitely change. We'll be okay if you leave the stream to go watch some of his highlights, because it'll definitely brighten your day just to show how great of a player he was, not just offensively, defensively, and just some of the highlights, career highlights, I should say. Hall of Famer, MVP, 18-time All-Star, 2-time World Series, 16-time Gold Glove winner, which I think might be a record, World Series MVP and All-Star Game MVP. Truly one of the greats. When you say GOATs, Brooks Robinson is definitely one of the greatest of all time. Eli, I know, again, way out of your time here, maybe Carver would have been better for it. But talk to me a little bit about Brooks Robinson. I wish we had Lewis here because I know he is a history buff, and I think this would have been perfect, right up his alley to talk about this. But when I mention Brooks Robinson, what's maybe the first thing that comes to your mind in terms of him as a player?
It's definitely the defense, and it's also the longevity with the Orioles. All 23 seasons of his with the Orioles, and it's weird to think about now, just now, as we're living now, the Orioles feel like a World Series contender, but it had been for most of our lifetimes. They just haven't been very competitive. And if you go way back to his time, though, they were pretty consistently great. They had this very long stretch. They were somewhat akin to the St. Louis Cardinals of the American League. They weren't the Yankees, but they were kind of the next rung down in terms of consistent winning teams. And he was in the center of it. He was their everyday third baseman, even more so defensively than offensively. I'm trying to see what his defensive WAR was over the course of his career.
I think I have that for you.
39.1. 39 just on defense, defense, 39 WAR, and even more than that offensively. That is what stuck out. You mentioned the Gold Glove awards. So often Gold Gloves are just based on habit, kind of on reputation more than actual production. But with Brooks, he was somebody that repeatedly earned it over and over and over again. And he did it. He made third base sexier than it had been defensively, with the way that his arm strength being able to compensate for a lot of difficult plays that are now more commonplace. But the best way you could describe him is somewhat like the Nolan Arenado of his generation. It's really similar overall player, that type of no doubt Hall of Fame talent. And unlike Arenado, he just had that consistency with one franchise that he was attached to. So yeah, pretty rough to see him go, but a really remarkable career that he had.
Yeah, well, it definitely changed baseball. So go ahead, look up some of his highlights, some of his career nods there. So just to watch that and really know what it means to be one of the best players of all time. But we're going to just go ahead and talk about why we're here. Talk about the Marlins. The Marlins are in the playoff hunt, coming off a series versus the Milwaukee Brewers, now up in Flushing, New York, to take on the mighty Mets and finishing off the series there. And again, division rival, so you never want to count them out, no matter what the record may be. Kevin, I'm going to go to you first. The Milwaukee series, it seemed like we have seen, or the Marlins have seen Milwaukee. It seems like every day out of the last 2 weeks. It seems like every other game they're playing the Milwaukee Brewers. How was this one different than the one they played at Milwaukee?
And soon enough, you may see them in the playoffs if they end up clinching that third seed. But yeah, you said it. Really just a tale of two different series for Miami. Obviously, they lose 3 out of 4 in Milwaukee. They take 2 out of 3 here. I know no one really wants to talk about that first game, but it's worth noting that Miami right now is without Sandy Alcantara and Yuri Perez. You only have really 3 starters, and you're going to go with 2 bullpen games, and they went with a bullpen game in that first game. So worth noting what could happen if your bullpen game goes wrong. You give up as many runs as you did to a Brewers offense that honestly isn't very good. And this, especially in a pitcher-friendly ballpark like Miami, it's not a really good offensive team. And obviously, Yelich hit very well, 2 homers in that game. Corbin Burns, Miami kind of did pretty well against them for the most part. And you would think that they didn't. They got him to go 5, which isn't something, Corbin Burns does. So game 2, obviously, they were able to get to Brandon Woodruff, someone who I think it was a complete game, either shutout or he gave up like a run or 2 in Milwaukee, but he won a complete game against them. Jake Berger obviously had a huge game. He had a homer. Brian De La Cruz, big game there. Pitching was great for obviously. I think it was Luzardo there, and then Puck gave up the 3-run shot to tie it up. So, and then the last game, Edward Cabrera, phenomenal job. Had one of his better outings since returning to the big leagues, and John Birdie, two home runs, and I think this was his second time hitting multi-homers. Furthest homer, I think second furthest homer of his career. His first one was in Coors Field, surprise, and then the second one came here at Lone Depot. I think it was dead center, 439, and Josh Bell had a big, homer, much needed. He'd been struggling big time since kind of a couple weeks after his hot stretch with Miami arriving here. So big series win for the Fish. You go to New York, you really have to sweep them, and you got to hope that Atlanta does the job that they got to do and take down the Cubs.
It's funny because on Unfiltered, Kevin, Billy Gill said, you know what they're going to do? They're going to win the bullpen game and lose the next 2, and quite the opposite happened this week. But it was good to see them match up better against these 2 arms in Woodruff and Peralta. They just could not hit them at all in Milwaukee, and just see them adjust and make the right adjustments, both for Cabrera and for the hitters against this team was good to see.
Yeah. Yet another series. I can't get over this, how often the Marlins get outscored by the opposing team in a series and yet win the series against that team. So it happened yet again.
I mean, to be fair, it was 16 runs in one game. Not much.
It happened in 16 runs because the Marlins, the underbelly of the Marlins pitching staff is really dicey right now. And unfortunately, the main culprit in that first game was Brian Hoeing. Hoeing is a guy for a big chunk of the season. I think there have been generally positive sentiment around him as him being like a real interesting, versatile piece of this pitching staff. And to see him get totally demolished the way that he did, allowing, I think at one point, 8 or 9 straight hitters to reach base, just an uncompetitive style of pitching from him, where he's somebody that I think before that outing, you were thinking that's somebody they might want to go to in some significant situation this week. That's somebody that would have, and probably still is, oddly enough, alive for a postseason spot on this pitching staff if they make it that far. So it's really concerning to have him blow up like that against a Brewers offense that is nothing special, to be honest with you. The strength of that Brewers team is their pitching staff, not their lineup. So even though it was the result the Marlins absolutely needed, still not all the way encouraging. It still kind of points to some of the concerns with this roster and ending it in a way where Luis Arraez aggravates his ankle injury in a very unique and unfortunate way that leaves a question as to what version of himself you're going to get for this final week of the season.
And we still don't even know if he's going to play. The lineup still at the moment isn't out. And that's why I did want to bring up that first game because, again, 3 starters, 2 bullpen games is what we assume would happen unless, obviously, bearing any roster moves that they bring up a starter from AAA. Really, not AAA. Only one you could think of is Monteverde, but I think he pitched very recently in that championship game, the first one. So just showing how bad a bullpen game could get for Miami. Brian Hoeing obviously struggling in this kind of second half of the year. Chagua couldn't even get through the first inning. Steven Oker had his struggles through giving up a 2-run bomb there to Josh Donaldson. So, man, if Miami really wants to get into these playoffs, I mean, you're going to have to rely on those bullpen games. You're going to have to kind of get creative. As Skip mentioned, the day that Sandy went down, you got to get creative. And we'll see how they do that. But obviously, I don't think a bullpen bullpen games are going to be the way right now.
Yeah, now we just have intern Nick join us. Nick, talk to us about the series against Milwaukee. Who do you like? Who do you didn't like? And maybe some surprises as they're going on now facing off against the Mets.
I mean, there's a lot to like, at least just by the standpoint of they took 2 out of 3. That's really what you at least needed. You would have preferred, obviously, to sweep, but you needed the 2 out of 3. So that was huge to get there. And John Birdie having that 2 home run game was absolutely electric in my mind. And yeah, like you were saying, going in this Mets series, I mean, it's going to be obviously super important as we push in this playoff push. And the Mets are presumably a team where they're trying to play spoiler, so they have an idea of what they want to push for in this series. They're trying to spoil the Marlins' hopes at making the postseason. But for the Marlins, that should be an incentive of this is a division opponent. This is someone you presumably don't like. This is someone that you need to beat down on while they're having a bad year, while they're down. It's when you take advantage of them and go out there and shoot, preferably sweep this series and really lock yourselves into the postseason. Now, obviously, it depends on how the other teams do, but it's a really important series, and I think it's a very winnable series versus a Mets team that should be trying, but really isn't giving it, 1,000% as they're not really playing for that much.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if Miami were to sweep and Atlanta sweeps, Miami's essentially basically locked in.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
They would have a 2-game lead over the Cubs. And yeah, it would put them in a very good position. Obviously, that's very unlikely to happen that both those things occur, but that correct. If they do their respective sweeps, then yes, that would be good.
Yes. Miami definitely isn't guaranteed if they went out, but I mean, if Miami can control it somewhat in their own ways, if they went out, they're probably basically in.
Yeah. And going back to that Milwaukee series, I wanted to point out just Corbin Burns really dominated the Marlins that first one, but was really just out of reach by just over the second inning. But then taking on mostly Freddie Peralta, Brandon Woodruff. Kevin, how do you see the Marlins going up against those two pitchers? Because Eli just mentioned their strength with their pitching, but the Marlins were able to capitalize on that and take over their starting pitching and get over on two of the best pitchers on their roster, aside from Corbin Burns. Just how do you see the offense in those last 2 games for the Fish and taking on these quality pitchers, not just random guys or bullpen games, but actual quality starters?
I'm surprised he got to Freddie Peralta. He's not someone who gives up too many hits. We were there with Lewis, and he was pointing it out. It's like, this is weird. This is a weird outing for someone like Peralta, Woodruff. It looks like Miami just, I guess, found something. They were able to catch on to something from his last outing where he went all 9 against Miami, and they were able to get to him there. Obviously, Jake Berger homer very early on. Miami really just wasn't able to get anything going after that until it was Garrett Hampson, I believe, RBI. He was the one who drove in that 5th run. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they were able to kind of get to him. Berger really got the big hit there, but aside from that, weren't able to do much more. And then Peralta, as I mentioned, just isn't someone who gives up too many hits. And props to Edward Cabrera, who kind of kept them in it. He kept them in it through his outing where he went 5. So great outing for him. If you get that outing from Edward Cabrera every 5th day, man, Miami's in great position.
You get that to go along with John Birdie hitting 2 home runs, having 3 home runs this entire series. Again, the first one out of reach, but still good to see John Birdie hit those home runs. Isaac, how is it seeing a guy like John Birdie produce this type of power and ability to just hit the ball even that low in the lineup? Just having a guy who maybe can potentially go out there, hit a couple home runs or even a home run that maybe you really need in John Birdie, someone who's not known for his power.
It's funny because just a couple of days ago, I believe it was a Saturday that I covered against Milwaukee. It was asked to Skip, Hampson swings such a hot bat. Why is John Birdie in the lineup? He said, you know what, John Birdie's just as hot. He doesn't play as good he didn't say this, but he doesn't play as good shortstop as Hampson or Wendell, but they're just going to go with whoever's hot right now. There's only a few games left and they have to go with the hot guys. And boy, did he prove us correct. John Birdie made his manager look really good, had a big hit in Saturday's game, if I remember correctly, and then goes off for 2 home runs, his second career multi-home run game on Sunday. So, whenever this lineup does come out, if they do in fact play today, I would expect him to be in the lineup again. And, you can have Hampson either pinch run or be a defensive replacement later in the game. But every playoff team, every winning team seems to have someone like a John Birdie or a Garrett Hampson on their club. And Miami, you think it's redundant to have them both, but no, they need them both desperately.
Yeah, especially with how Wendell's been struggling. Yes, Wendell gives you phenomenal defense, and he's been great at when you look at the stats, I believe he's like 6 DRS. Correct, I believe that's where he's at right now. But he's been great, but the bat just hasn't been there. What Birdie and Hampson just kind of been able to provide you a little bit of both. Obviously, not the great defense Wendell has, but still good enough to stay there. And then every once in a while, Garrett Hampson gives you a couple big hits like he did on Saturday. Birdie, surprising homers, I guess is what we could say. So it's good to have those two guys. They've been great this season, especially Hampson, who's kind of been up and down, still being able to find a consistent, I guess, rhythm offensively, despite his moving up and down. Not really being down for too long, but when he's up, he's been a big time player for them, especially late in the game. As Isaac mentioned, defensive replacement, pinch runner, it's huge.
Yeah, to go ahead and move on a bit from the Marlins side, let's look at the other two teams that are catching up against the Marlins, and ahead of them at the moment, Arizona, Chicago, both have 3 games left. The Cubs have a huge series against the Atlanta Braves, so it might be a little difficult for them to get those 3 against the Braves, but we said that a couple weeks ago, and the Marlins swept the Braves, so you never know. And Arizona, I believe, who are they playing?
Chicago White Sox.
The White Sox. So, again, that might be a little something there. But talk to us, Eli, the Cubs, Arizona, what are their chances in terms of maybe potentially clinching a playoff spot? Again, White Sox, not the best team in baseball, but the Cubs are playing the best team in baseball.
Yeah, this is going to come down to the wire. I really think when we come on for this final stream on Friday, it's still going to be completely up in the air. It's hard to see sweeps happening in any of these circumstances. I know there's some concern about the D-backs matching up with the White Sox, Jose Urena and friends, and how not only how bad that White Sox team has been, but now even Luis Robert has gone on the IL. So the one good hitter that they still had healthy, he's going to be out obviously for this series. At the same time, the D-backs, they don't have the front of their rotation going. Both Gallen and Merrill Kelly are not going to pitch in this series, so they're going to have to go up in that final matchup that they have over the weekend instead of beating up on the White Sox. So on that side, I really have no idea. I have no idea how this is going to play out. That's what makes this such a fun time of year to follow along. As for the Cubs going up against a Braves team that as good as they've been, and although they have really nothing left to prove this season, they don't take their foot off the pedal. They've shown that throughout the entire Brian Snitker era. They play their main guys, and they have those guys find incentives to continue playing hard, especially Acuna. He's always chasing like his own milestones, and you could call it selfish, but it tends to benefit the team if it means that he's fully locked in and engaged during every single game at every time of year. And their record speaks for itself over the last handful of years. They don't really let up. Their starting pitching is a little messy at this time of year, a bit dicey, but they are going to be at home, and you would think that they're going to have the advantage in that series. That even if they aren't as desperate as the Cubs are, it's going to be difficult for the Cubs to win the series, let alone sweep it in there. So even though the Marlins are a game back, we've been over this time and time again. The Marlins have tiebreakers against all these teams now, against the D-backs and the Cubs and the Reds. Those are locked in. If they finish tied, the Marlins are going to get in over those teams and make it in. So that certainly makes this deficit seem a little less daunting at this time of year. It really could go either way. Isaac loves to check his FanGraphs playoff odds. That's why the Marlins continue to check in are they still above 50% at the moment?
Well, I checked a couple hours ago. They are at 55.5%. The Cubs just above them at 58.2%. And the Diamondbacks are a little bit higher. They're at 78. They did go down. They were about 88% before they played the Yankees yesterday. They lost, and they went down to about mid 70%. So, FanGraphs seems to believe that the Diamondbacks have an inside edge, but, the Marlins are there. And then the next team behind them is the Reds, who are at 8%, lower than the Marlins have been all year. Even after they got swept by the Rays at home, the Marlins were down to 11%. That's where they dropped their lowest, and the Reds are below that. So that's something good to see.
It's worth noting who's actually pitching for the Diamondbacks tonight. It's Zach Davies.
Zach Davies.
This season he has a 6.81 ERA. He's been horrible. So you're going to have a battle of two really bad pitchers, although apparently Urena's been all right these last couple of games, according to Eli.
That Cubs-Brave one starting pitching matchup should be definitely very interesting. Probably
Chicago's going with their two guys, Stroman and Steele, going in there in that series. So I don't think Gallon or Merrill Kelly are pitching for the Diamondbacks in that series. I believe Kelly pitched the last game against the Yankees. So I guess Chicago escapes their two top guys.
Yeah, I guess they're relying more on their offense again, going against the White Sox. They're guessing taking it relatively not easy, but in terms of maybe relying more on their hitters compared to more of their pitchers. But we haven't heard from Nick his stance on this. How do you believe this is going to fare in the Marlins' way? Again, the Cubs, Braves, really top pitching matchup right there in the bottom left. And then you look at everywhere else. Former friend,
no. I was laughing. We were using bottom left. I was thinking bottom right. I thought you were being sarcastic.
Well, maybe. If you're a sicko, then you love that matchup.
Yeah.
I think the big positive, I think I said a little earlier, where it feels like it's in the Marlins' hands. I think if they continue to win, if they're going to beat the Mets, I think the Cubs are going to drop some games. The Diamondbacks are going to lose a couple of these to where the Marlins are able to win and win out against them, or at least sweep the Mets, at least take 2 out of 3. It's going to put themselves in a really, really good position. Because like we were saying, the Braves aren't going to take it easy on the Cubs. The Braves aren't going to sit back and say, oh, we made the playoffs. We got the 1 seed. We're just going to hang out. We're going to just go into the playoffs. They're going to stay ready. They're going to stay hot. They're going to be hitting. They're going to be playing hard. And it's always like everyone says you don't want to be out of the playoffs, obviously, but people like to play spoiler. The White Sox are going to enjoy it. They're going to say, hey, I'm going to try and get the Diamondbacks out because it's fun to play spoiler. Guys, if you're not going to make the playoffs, they at least have a little bit of joy at the end of the season to say, hey, we played a team that should be a playoff team, but we knocked them out of it. So I think there's that incentive for at least those teams, which obviously the Mets have that same incentive against the Marlins. But I think it really is in the Marlins' hands. They have the fate. The Cubs, it's a tough matchup versus the Braves. I could see them obviously losing 2 out of 3. So that puts the Marlins in a really good spot if the Braves are able to step on the gas. It's a good pitching matchup today. It's going to be really good. Braves do obviously have the edge, so it should be really exciting. And, yeah, it's a fun time of year to be just a baseball fan looking at this NL wild card race.
Absolutely.
The White Sox, you were going, Isaac? My bad.
No, yeah, just the fact that I do think that the Mets not only will be looking to play spoilers, they're looking to get revenge on the Marlins, who really have played spoilers to them multiple times in these teams' histories. And, yeah, you saw what the Pirates just did to the Reds, pretty much single-handedly ruined their chances at getting into the postseason. So, yes, Nick raises a very good point in that these teams are really playing. The White Sox do not want to see the Diamondbacks do well. The White Sox don't want to see the Cubs do well either. So, it's going to be a lot of spoiling going around.
And the White Sox beat the Braves earlier this year. Obviously, they had different guys on their team. Jake Berger was on that team. I believe they still had Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, all those guys. But never know. Chicago could take down one of these better teams in the National League, you could say.
And especially, obviously, for the White Sox, too, they don't want to be getting swept by the Braves and have a celebration on their home field. No one ever likes having people celebrate on your field that they clinched a playoff spot. So they're not going to be folding over to that.
Miami dealt with that one last year.
Yeah, mentioning all this, we haven't mentioned the Reds. Eli, do the Reds even have a shot at this 2.5 games back? But again, against Cleveland, Giolito has been very susceptible to giving up runs since he was traded to Los Angeles, now with the Guardians. Do the Reds have an outsider shot at potentially making a wild card spot?
Yeah, I think they do. When I mentioned that, when I've done things tracking how the Reds are doing, I get comments saying the Reds are cooked. They're out of it. Don't focus on them. They're behind us. But I mean, we just went through the concerns that the other teams all have, including the Marlins at this point. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that the D-backs and the Cubs and the Marlins all lose the majority of their games during this week. It's possible. And the Reds, if they win, I think they'd have to probably win 4 of their last 5 to make up that ground and get in the 3rd spot in that event. It's possible. I don't love their situation. Both they're probably I would say the worst of these teams in multiple respects, both the record wise and the fact that they're leaning very heavily on young guys that a lot of them are going through growing pains as well. I need to double check. I think they're getting Matt McClain back. If not tonight, then tomorrow. So he has been the one rookie that's been extremely consistently great for them. So that is something that stabilizes their offense. They've had some really head-scratchingly bad hitting games for a long stretch of the season. As good as his offense looked in the middle of the summer, without McClain was like the one guy who was super consistent ever since he got called up. So having him back will help a lot. Their pitching staff is just in disarray. Their bullpen was kind of carrying a lot of the load for their pitching staff during that hot streak in the middle of the year. And Alexis Diaz in particular, if you just look at the change in who he was during the middle of the season versus what he's been lately, and he was right in the middle of that epic loss. I mean, there is a case to be made that once you blow a 9-0 lead to the Pirates, including 13 unanswered runs allowed at one point, that speaks a lot as to the state that your team is in. And Alexis Diaz right in the middle of that as well. If you can't trust him, who can you trust in that entire pitching staff, really? So they're outsiders. Isaac laid it out. The Fangraphs thinks that they are significant underdogs compared to both the Cubs and the Marlins, but I still think they're alive. I think there's still a path just because none of these teams is especially trustworthy. It's a big contrast between the NL wildcard versus the AL wildcard picture. It's in that situation, it's 4 teams really for 3 spots between the AL West and the wild card. And those teams, it's not just record-wise, those are more well-rounded teams, generally teams that are a little bit more experienced. And in this case, this is a situation where the expanded playoffs has opened the door for very mid teams to sneak into the playoffs and have a chance to win a world title. That was not the case in baseball in recent history, but this is sometimes there just are not 12 great championship caliber teams in the majors at the same time. There certainly are not 12 of those teams in baseball this year, and yet a couple of them are going to get a chance to get in. That's the reality that baseball has chosen, and I love it. I think it's great for teams exactly like the Marlins. When that decision was announced, expanding the playoff format to what it is now, my very first thought is this is huge for the Marlins because they are never unlikely. I'm not going to say never. They're very unlikely to ever put together a juggernaut team, a Braves-like team, a 100-win team with the resources that they have. But you don't need to do that to win a championship in baseball anymore. You don't have to be that number 1 seed. You could still make it in. You could still make it very deep. And that is, it's a great blessing to be in this position. Even though it's a kick in the face to traditionalists, but this is where we are. And that's why I have no idea how this is going to go because I don't trust any of these teams.
Yeah. We'll get to more on that after we get to the break. I know we have a couple minutes left. Kevin, I want to give you the floor. This is your minor league talk. I'm giving you now until the break to do some minor league talk. I know they had the awards
right now.
Yes. Why? Of course. A couple minutes, Kev. Quick couple minutes on the minors before we get into Flip Fish.
I think we have more important things to talk about than the minor leagues, but very quickly, Troy Johnston, minor league player of the year, very well deserved. Xavier Edwards, AAA, Banfield double, Jake Thompson, high A, Eric Lara, and Andres Falor were DSL, and Julio Mendez was FCL. So shout out to those guys, very well deserved. And let's get going.
All right, so there we go. Even quicker than I would have thought.
I guess we could just mention that the Blue Wahoos tonight, they are going to play a must-win game to keep their championship hopes alive. They're the reigning Southern League champions, and they're down 1-0 in a best-of-3 championship series. They're at home. They have Luis Palacios on the mound, not a top prospect name, but he's been in the system a while. And if they win, they force.
For the most part, though,
he's been fine. He's been fine. But if they win, they force a winner-take-all game 3. So the Marlins minor league season will end within the next 30 hours, either tonight or tomorrow night.
All right. So, Isaac, take it away.
Well, yeah, obviously another time for Flip Fish. We changed it up on Twitter a little bit today. Since the Marlins just finished up a series against the Mets, we decided to do Florida Marlins and the New York Mets rather than Miami. And we had a lot of fun responses, honestly. I think I had to correct a couple of people who put Yamamoto, for example, and Jonathan Villar, for some reason, someone put that. I think that was Lewis. But we saw Mike Jacobs, we saw Luis Castillo, we saw Paul Duca, we saw Al Leiter, and all of those are eligible names. But now I need you guys to guess this name. Very brief Marlins tenure. Not crazy Mets tenure either, but I'm sure Marlins After Dark is watching and in his lab getting ready to answer this. So I guess while we wait for you guys to respond, we can go to break.
I'm not used to actually being a good player. This is surprising.
Yeah, we chose a good player.
You chose a good. I'm not used to that. I saw 46 score, and I'm like,
yeah, no, this was
a negative
Gold Glove winner. As you can see, 1,700 career hits, almost reached 300 career bombs. This is a This was a fun player.
Almost
I
300.
thought he had I thought he had a 3 home run game as a Marlin. I must have been mistaken. I looked it up and it's not true. But
All right. So after this break, we'll have Isaac Flipped Fish answer, and we'll see if there's a starting lineup between the Mets and the Marlins. So stay tuned.
all right,
right.
no guesses. Does Nick have a guess really quick? Dude, I don't think he saw the chat.
You didn't see it?
No, he didn't see it. That's why I chose him. Oh,
Yeah.
Marlins After Dark got one wrong.
Not Cliff Floyd.
Not-
Definitely not this man.
Not Starling Marte. Look
He's
at
not
the
50. Starling's
He's not
not
50 years old.
He's not 50, maybe.
in Aaron's defense, Starling Marte might probably look the same and have the same body that he has now when he is 50. So
Not Cliff.
got to give him that.
So, no, or maybe he is running like a 50-year-old. Maybe he is running.
Hanson was never on the Mets.
He is.
On your team.
Let's-
Alrighty, going once. And the answer, I guess, I can share it now. It is Mike Cameron, a former Marlin for just half a season during the 2011 year. He signed a 3-year deal with the Mets. Like I said, 1,700 career hits. And he was a fun Marlin for that little second half. They acquired him from Boston in that 11th season. And very fun Marlin. I thought he was going to be part of that 2012 season as well, but unfortunately that did not happen.
Yeah, and his son is in pro baseball. Daz Cameron.
I didn't know that. Not
Yeah.
Gary Sheffield.
I know he played with the Tigers, but he hasn't gotten much action this year. So his career is he's going to have a long road ahead to reach 40-something WAR himself.
Yeah, fun player, part of that special 2001 Seattle Mariners team. And speaking of other special teams, again, this Marlins team going up against the Mets. And we have no clue if this game is even going to get played today. Doubleheader, could it be a late start? We're still trying to figure things out. There's not even a lineup, but we do have the pitching matchups, so we can go ahead and talk a little bit about the pitching matchups and maybe what to expect there. For the Marlins, it's slated with Brax, TBA, and then Jesus Luzardo. You might see Yuri and other sites pegged for that second slot, but it is not going to be Yuri at all. He is on the IL. He will not be starting that second game. So, Kevin, talk to me about these matchups here. Who really intrigues you the most, and maybe who is the mystery man? Who is that second starter?
That mystery man is probably going to be JT Chagua, if I had to guess, unless this turns into a doubleheader tomorrow. But yeah, Braxton coming off a pretty good start, if I recall. He's been great for the most part. Luzardo had another good start as well against Milwaukee. Gave up, I believe, just one run. It was like a sac fly. And they're going up against Kodai Senga, who they actually got to. They won that game. They got to like
did not win.
They didn't win it. They kept it close. That was a weird game because what they did is they didn't strike out. Like they continued to put up really long at bats and waste a lot of pitches on him, but they just could not like put across the big hit in that one. And that was one of the ones. Yeah, that was one of the games that they lost. That must have been the third game of that series.
Yes,
I was there too, and I just didn't remember. Yeah, but anyway, they're going up against Senga, and then you have David Peterson, who's kind of been, I guess, more of a swingman type guy for them. But with the trades of Verlander and Scherzer, he's been a kind of a consistent starter. Same thing with Joey Lucchesi. So Miami, I think, definitely edges them out in the pitching matchups here. Besides Senga in that second game, we're going with a bullpen game. Maybe Cueto as the bulk guy. They've been using him in a lot of mop-ups lately. That's really towards the end of games. We saw him in that 16-run game where he gave up the second homer to Yelich. So, yeah, should be a fun matchup, I guess, tonight if they do play. Lucchesi surprisingly been pretty good in his limited sample size of starts. He's more of a reliever, so Yeah, this should be a Miami. You should favor Miami tonight. I would say Lucchesi is good, but he's not going to give you too much length.
Just be happy Jose Buto is not lined up to pitch against the Marlins this week. And yeah, they had good numbers against Lucchesi. They got him a little bit in that Tuesday game. Is it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday game against them. They got him for a few hits, a couple runs, but they did strike out 5 times. So we shall see. I think it's Hampson, the one that has great career numbers against Lucchesi. So
I guess if you want a good update from Mr. Noah Berger, he said the tarp is being rolled up. So it looks like there may be a game today.
Yes, as somebody that is relatively close to the stadium, I would be surprised if it got rained out. I do expect there to be some sort of window. In fact, I was a little surprised that they delayed it in the first place, because if they're moving the tarp now, first pitch at 7:10, they might.
Maybe they do
they already said it's in a delay, so I guess it will be later than 7:10, but might not be that much later. I'm confident they'll get this game in, and that certainly the next two would be even a higher likelihood of no interruptions.
Yeah. I mean, the Marlins haven't put out their lineups, but the Mets did. If you want to look at who Braxton Garrett has to go up against, again, very interesting lineup as always. Brandon Nimmo, Ronnie Mauricio at second, Alonso, Lindor, Vientos, McNeil, Francisco Alvarez, Brett Beatty, and then Tim LaCastro. So again, players that the Marlins have seen plenty of times, but really moved around up. Some guys further up in the lineup, some guys have been lowered. Isaac, looking at this lineup, who do you like? Not maybe like, but who could potentially give the most challenge to the Marlins? Again, Pete Alonso can go ahead and hit who knows how many home runs against him. Mark Vientos had a really great series against the Marlins. And then you also have Jeff McNeil, who can go ahead and out of nowhere just have maybe a 4-hit game. Is there anyone on that Mets lineup that you might be looking at?
Just be careful with Mark Vientos. That's someone that hit 2 home runs one of them against Yuri, the other one against who knows who on Wednesday.
They're both against Yuri.
He hit 2 home runs against Yuri on Wednesday. And obviously, Alonso has some history against Braxton. I believe he's got a home run. Francisco Lindor has a couple of home runs against Braxton. So it's still a dangerous lineup. Obviously they sold David Robertson. They sold a few guys. Starling Marte is not in there. But Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil, Pete Alonso, Vientos, Alvarez has a lot of power. It's a very dangerous lineup for someone like Brax to go up against in crusty conditions out in Queens right now. So it's not going to be an easy win for this team at all.
And Brandon Nimmo, I think, is a big name to look at. That guy's always been a pest. I think you could say it like that. Really works the walks. Jeff McNeil, I know he's having a little bit of a down year, but against Miami, he hit that. I think it was the game-winning home run.
He was an asshole against Miami that whole series. Dear Lord.
Got to be lucky DJ Stewart isn't in the lineup today.
Against the lefty.
Pete Alonso. Ronnie Mauricio has been really good throughout, his first go at the big league level.
What I will say about Mauricio is that he's a switch hitter, and he has pretty extreme platoon splits.
Yeah.
He has been very good against righty pitching. He's been terrible against lefties. And Braxton in his first game, Luzardo in the third game. So that is a big point in the Marlins' favor. That'll allow their innings, both in the starters and in the relief, where these games are anywhere close. You'll see Nardi and you'll see Tanner Scott and you'll see Matt Moore. I think that will this is a staff that is very heavy on left-handed star power at this point. They're very skew in terms of the guys you trust to the left side. That's something to keep in mind for this series, for the next series, and if they go to the postseason, they're much better suited towards facing lefty hitters than they are the other way around.
Yeah. Same question to you, Nick. Looking at this lineup, maybe what stands out to you, and how can the Marlins, what would be the best case scenario against this lineup?
I think Eli just said it with the really big part of this Marlins bullpen is just really jamming the lefties in there, because even looking throughout the lineup, obviously Pete Alonso and Lindor are going to do their thing really no matter what. They're 2 of the better hitters in baseball just in general, but then just looking down that lineup, it's going to be lefty heavy, which you would think would be good, go our way. But I think it's still a dangerous lineup. I know with the Mets just as a whole, looking down and you have some good guys in there. Pete Alonso, like Kev said, he can hit a home run whenever. He could go for 4 home runs this series. You never know. Just Pete Alonso is always good. Francisco Lindor is always going to be exciting in there, hitting in that 4 spot. So the Marlins pitching staff is really going to have to step up, especially game 2. That game 2 is really going to be a challenge with staying on the mound. He's going to be hard for the Marlins to hit that game, I feel like. So that game, too, is what I'm really looking forward to see how this Marlins pitching staff is going to be able to adjust to this Mets lineup and see how they're able to work them and get through this series. But tonight, I'm feeling pretty confident in Brax if they do get a game in. I feel like he'll have a very good night, being on the mound, being a strong lefty up there.
You're muted, Eli.
What I will also note, this is, I guess it's not confirmed, it is my strong anticipation that before tomorrow's game, Huascar Brazaban should be back from the IL after being out a while. The dream scenario, of course, is winning tonight in such convincing fashion and leading by such convincing fashion after Braxton leaves the game that they could go to either Cueto or Emmanuel De Jesus, who was just called back up as a mop-up guy, and leave everybody else fresh for tomorrow, so that Wednesday is just a true bullpen game of going to the guys you actually trust in that situation. De Jesus and Cueto are the guys that can eat innings. At this time of year, when you need to win a game, the idea of having them as the bulk guy for tomorrow for any game that's just unacceptable. Like, you can't put those guys in there and expect them to get outs in a game that you feel you need to win. The only way to use them in any sort of coherent way is in a lopsided game. Things are a lot easier if they win tonight in a lopsided fashion, and they can save all the relievers they really want to, who, of course, had a day off yesterday, and put them in a position where they can go – all those guys can go even longer than they normally would on Wednesday and just patch it together with 5 or 6 guys that you really like. But if that doesn't happen, then they are in a pretty tough spot. This pitching depth is very thin. Aside from the guys I named a few minutes ago, who are basically all lefties and only a handful of guys, it's just not a strong pitching staff at this particular moment. One thing we didn't touch on much in the last series was Edward Cabrera performing the way he did in that final start. And really, ever since he got called back up, he's been better overall than he was before getting sent down. So he's not going to be involved in this series, but he's going to be absolutely crucial to them in Pittsburgh and then in the postseason. In the meantime, for this particular series, their outlook is a little shaky. They'll just need the hitters to step up here. And Luis Arraez's status is a huge question hanging over all this, is whether he's going to play in the series, whether he's going to start games, and how close to 100% he's going to be. If he's not in there, then it's a lot of pressure on Xavier Edwards to handle a big load for this team the rest of the way. And there have been some nice glimpses from Edwards since he's been up this entire month. It's just there's no really filling the shoes of Arraez if he is going to be a reduced version of himself the rest of the way.
Going back to the pitching, I think you could even mention Matt Moore as an option for tomorrow. He's someone who's pitched, who was a former starting pitcher, and obviously you don't have him for the playoffs, so you may as well just try to get best use out of him now before you can't use him in the postseason. You would make a lot of sense. He's a lefty, team that struggles against lefties. You know, if you're going to go with a guy, Matt Moore will be hit. Aside from that, I think you kind of said, Eli, it's not a very strong staff. Okert struggled. He's a lefty. De Jesus would be the only other bulk guy you could think of. Soriano's a righty. I don't know if you want to throw him out there, but he's been really good. So if you want to risk it and go Soriano, that's obviously an option. But Matt Moore would make the most sense given the fact that lefty, you don't have him for too much longer. May as well try to squeeze out whatever you have left out of Matt Moore.
Eli, I would like to know, I know the record without Jorge Soler is great. I would like to know, if you can, at the end of the stream, what the record is without Arraez and or Soler. When one of them is missing or both of them is missing, what is your record? Because I remember them winning a lot without Arraez for some silly reason, the same way they're good without Soler. It's a statistical anomaly, but I'm still curious what their record is in those scenarios.
Well, looking up now, with Arraez out of the lineup this year, they're 8-7. That's a little bit better than with him in there. It extrapolates to slightly better. They're a little bit above 500 without him. They're a little bit above 500 with him. Yeah, we went on the Soler stat was crazy initially. There was right when he went on the IL, they were 15-1 in the first 16 games he didn't play. Those numbers came back down to earth a little bit when he was out. Overall, they've been great when they're missing Soler. Yeah, hopefully that's not a concern. As you'll see from the series predictions pretty soon, there's a lot of faith in Soler to not just play in these games, but to be very productive in this series. I guess that's he's been pretty close, not as hot as he's been all year, but he's been overall pretty impressive. And we saw him at least once hitting the leadoff spot. I'm not looking for the lineup at this moment. Let's see if Soler or Arise is in the leadoff spot.
No,
It is
Soler is leading off, no Arise. So here is your lineup for tonight's ball game. It is without Luis Arise. Jorge Soler will lead off and play right. Josh Bell will DH bat second. Jake Berger at third. Brian De La Cruz in left. John Birdie at second base. Yuli Gurriel at first. Jazz Chisholm Jr. in center. Nick Fortes behind the dish catching Braxton. And Garrett Hampson is at short. So usually what we see with Arise out, you see Xavier Edwards getting the time at second base. But here, Skip is going with the veteran presence of Birdie and Hampson up the middle, which you can't really blame him for going with both those guys. But between swinging a hot bat, have speed, and I'm sure you'll see Edwards at some point off the bench. You hope for Gurriel at some point.
Yuli, Kevin.
And worth mentioning that Soler's playing right field. Is this the first time he plays right field since returning from the injury?
Very good point, Kevin. Yes.
And he's leading off. Skip had told us a couple weeks back that with Soler, if he's the DH, he's leading off, and that hasn't been the case. So obviously things change, but that happens.
On other news, the Cleveland Guardians are up 3-0 on the Cincinnati Reds. So I think a loss there and a win by either the Cubs or Arizona pretty much eliminates them. Not mathematically yet, but realistically they would be eliminated. And that doesn't matter. That is true. But yeah, Guardians are up 3-0.
Gurriel first base. Eli, what are your thoughts on this lineup with Jazz that low? You have Gurriel just even in there maybe, and you having John Birdie a little higher up in the lineup, probably due to his previous play.
Yeah, and we should, at this particular moment, still no full there's no specific start time given, so no 100% confirmation about a game tonight, although I do think there will be one eventually. We see Jazz dropped a little bit because they're facing a lefty. We see Jesus out of the lineup because they're facing a lefty. I'm not a fan. Sanchez, both of those guys had better quality at bats, even with the platoon disadvantage as the year has gone on. I don't think it's really a good idea to have Gurriel starting games under any circumstances unless you really need to. But we'll go into a press box report here coming in on the end. Better late than never.
At Citi Field. Let's see if he is in a better condition than the field. Noah, floor is yours.
It's marginal whether I'm in better condition than the field. Yeah, it looks rough. It's definitely not playable right now. Skip said earlier when he went out there, it was not playable when he went out there. It doesn't look like it is anywhere near playable right now. The best I got from an umpire was that's the extent of my investigative journalism for today. But it's really up in the air whether this game gets played tonight. I have no idea. Some people are thinking 9:30. I'm thinking, please don't start that late because I'm very tired.
You look great.
Thank you. I seem to look my best when I've been up since 4:30 in the morning. But yeah, there's a whole section of I think it's Navy corpsmen out there in right field. It's kind of cool. What?
Did Skip mention anything today? Did you have the chance to talk to him at all?
Yeah. So Arias is not going to be in the lineup, as you can see. He's still heavily lifting.
Still in the booth?
He's got like a brace on it. It's hard to describe. But he said that he's possibly available off the bench. I don't buy it. Berger's full go. I'm very confused with Soler playing an outfield position with the field conditions as they are. Very confused.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that next.
Good point.
You have no option if if they're adamant about having Birdie and Hampson in there. Yuli Gurriel in there against the left-hander, they can't have Bell anywhere else, and so Soler is forced to the outfield. Unfortunately, there. And honestly, I'm more comfortable him playing. Obviously, the conditions make it shitty, but
But he's playing out on the grass, so it's not as bad.
Right. It's not cheap.
And it's not the turf that always messes with his back. So that's one good thing. But again, everything's going to come down to the playability of this field. And just right now, it just does not look good.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out post game. But as you mentioned, anything about that anyone ask about tomorrow? Possible way they'll go with that.
Let's focus on getting tonight's game played before we focus on tomorrow. And it's going to be a bullpen game. He's going to announce it once he knows who he's used today. So the Brazaban's here with the team. He threw 2 innings on Sunday. And will potentially be activated in the coming hours and days. Everyone else, the injury report was it wasn't even worth posting because everything was just business as usual. Yeah, everyone's just progressing. We've got feet markers for Trevor Rogers. He's up to 90 feet. Whoop-de-doo. 6 those now starting his off-season program, so he's done.
Oh my god!
Yeah. So business as usual.
You already got shut down for the year.
Shut down.
One competitive inning, 0 ERA.
One competitive inning.
What is his whip? Is what, like 9?
It's a 2 whip, but it's a 40% strikeout rate. So that's what you want from a future reliever. Yeah.
This is the epitome of small sample sizes. But yeah. What else you guys want?
Are there any fans there, or?
Yeah, it's starting to fill in. There's a big giant fan out in center, out beyond the infield, blowing on the infield dirt. I think it's
like
like an actual
machine fan. Okay, yeah. Not a fat fan, or not a fan of the San Francisco Giants.
Like for a split second, I'm like, no, how can you? Why are you pointing out a
huge fan?
I guess worth asking. So they took no tarp on the field right now. I guess
the tarp is off.
So they're still
the tarp is off. They've got 5 different tractor things working on the field right now.
Yeah, as you keep saying, it's not about the precipitation; it's about the actual quality of the existing field.
Yeah, no, the rain stopped. The infield is saturated, and it's just not playable.
Yeah, well, somebody should get fired for that. That's not Mother Nature's fault. Got to protect the fields. The rain is coming down.
The tarp's been on the field for a week.
Yeah.
They didn't have a chance. They didn't have a chance to prepare the field because of how long this storm lasted.
I see.
They had the storm gone away when it was supposed to. They would have uncovered the field at like noon today and been working on it since then. They weren't able to uncover the field until about like 6:30. I'm sorry, not 6:30, but to like 5:30.
All right. Well, I have a question because, with games that have such serious meaning and playoff implications, they want to avoid, Major League Baseball does, they want to avoid double headers at all costs. That's correct, right? Because that's why they didn't do a Yankees Diamondbacks double. Do I have that correct?
Trust me, there was an MLB official here, part of all those meetings on the field.
It's a huge disadvantage for you need to get these games played.
The Marlins don't want a doubleheader right now.
Of course, they don't want a doubleheader.
Right now, I'm looking at Jorge Soler, Avi Garcia, and Yuli Gurriel testing out tentatively stepping onto the infield to
see if you can get it.
It won't work. I promise you.
No, Avi Garcia is with them.
Avi Garcia is here. He was running in the outfield earlier. Again, business as usual. Everyone's just continuing their progressions.
Is Sandy and Yuri travel with the team, I assume?
Yes, they are both here.
Yep.
They're both
here.
Yuri
they made the video with Las Mayores with him, Soler, and Arise in DLC. They all played dominoes together.
Pretty much everybody's here.
Alfaro and all those guys are there. I guess the taxi squad.
He's the one I didn't see. I knew there was somebody.
Davis?
Jonathan Davis is not. He's still continuing his progression back in Miami.
Oh.
I thought he was going to be ready for the division series, no? I thought he was going to be ready for the division series, no?
You know what? I thought we were friends. Okay? You don't have to bring that back up.
Is Lindgren there?
Okay, we're not going to go.
Oh, he was optioned.
Yeah, no, but sometimes they stay with. They've been with the team.
Nobody's going back down to Jacksonville. Their season's over. So it's whether he's.
Did I see Jeff Lindgren? No, I didn't see Jeff Lindgren. Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, he got options. He's not here.
But okay.
Hey, listen. I got nothing.
All right.
I had something clever, and then it just
Keep talking. No, we're like peaking viewers right now. For some reason.
Yeah, we're at 32. Keep cooking. How was your Yom Kippur?
Oh my god.
horrible.
All right, that's it. I don't need. That's it. That's the review right there.
But you want me to complain about me being up since 4:30 this morning? I could go on for that for a couple hours, although I would like to take a nap.
I guess I have one question for Noah. Why JFK and not LaGuardia?
So the Delta flight to JFK was cheaper. And
Oh, Delta.
One.
Well,
Two.
we could stop you right there because if people support Fish on First as a super subscriber on fishonfirst.com, beginning at just $3 a month, they can put us in a position where we don't have to cheap out on doing the best quality of work possible and the best quality of life possible.
You're saying that as if Fish on First is paying. Time out. You're saying that as if Fish on First is paying for this trip. Does that mean I'm getting reimbursed?
Jesus Christ, no.
In an unrelated payment, that could be larger if we had a larger super subscriber base. Yes, so we appreciate everybody that already subscribes. We hope those that already do continue to do so the rest of the postseason and in the off season because we continue to provide you with special perks because of that. Yeah, but that's my pitch for the moment, and we can finish up with Noah. I actually have to take my AirPods out because those are dying on me.
We have some time, Kevin. Yeah, I know you had a special magnet giveaway. Or before Noah goes ahead, did you record a video or do you want to say your prediction live on stream?
Just take a video of the field.
I have to remember what it was. No. Yes.
Just say Marlins take 2
Marlins 2 of 3 and Josh Bell.
Okay. I like that. I feel like we'll have a good road trip.
Yeah, I need some sleep. Well, I'll see you guys.
Alrighty.
We love you.
Hopefully, I'll see you in a couple weeks or next week.
All right, Kevin, you had a special magnet giveaway, which attracted a lot of people. I'll admit a little more than I even suspected. People really want this magnet. They have their games circled, really fun schedule. Dodgers, Yankees, everyone. Take it away.
So you have to follow Fish on First, and you just have to tell me what game you're, I guess, looking forward to. A lot of different answers, I will say. We had someone who wanted to really watch Tim Anderson, a couple Dodgers. Someone wanted to watch the Braves. I saw Sean Barrett put opening day. Eli, I don't know if you have the tweet lined up just to put the one that I chose, but a lot of you didn't follow Fish on First, so shame on you. And this is the guy we went with. We went with David A. Marcio, who's looking forward to see the Dodgers, and he'll be there for all 3 games. So shout out to David. I will contact you, and you get a super duper special 2024 magnet that has all 7-10 Friday starts. So they are making a change there. That's which I 100% like. I will say I prefer those start times than 6:40, 4:10.
But so, Kevin, they go into your bedtime. That's not good.
They do, but it's fine.
Alrighty. He's been following our stuff for a while. He's a Los Angeles.
He followed the account, so I had to give it him.
Yeah, he's a Los Angeles-based teacher who's a longtime Marlins fan, and so congrats to David on that.
All right, we don't know when the game's going to be played, so I think if you guys are ready, we can go into predictions, and we can do a little. You guys can go in depth on your predictions if you want. Now we have a little bit of time, so Eli, let's get the music started before we look at our leaderboards and what our super subscribers picked.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
I can't wait for next year's. I want a new one. I want a new voice. I want a different thing of Kim. I want everything new for next year. I can't wait.
All right, everyone here, if you're watching this now with 6 games left, you should already know what prediction time is all about. You're going to give us your prediction. 2 out of 3 could be from either team. You can have Mets take 2, and your MVP be Huascar Brazoban. As an example there, as we're seeing some of our super subscribers, some DLC, Jazz. I see a lot of Marlins love. Very few Mets MVPs. Very few Mets at all.
The only I need to double this. may have gotten one more while we were on, but of these, only Paolo picked the Mets, and he said he did it as a reverse jinx. He doesn't like wholeheartedly believe in the Mets. He just, that just shows where people are at. Even though, of course, the Marlins lost to this same team in Miami very recently against a lot of the same players that were involved with that. But it's amazing how much the entire vibe of this fan base, the aura around it, changes with every single series. So coming off a series win, and naturally they lean into winning another series. But this is the second to last regular season series of prediction time. I think I have the leaderboard up here somewhere. Is super subscriber Williams still on top? And I was ordinarily you can only earn a maximum of 3 points for each prediction time, but I was thinking of adding a wrinkle in for the final one, depending on if the Marlins are still alive for a playoff spot. Yeah, but for this one, we'll keep it conventional with just the who's going to win, how many wins, and the MVP.
So without further ado, let's get the music, and we'll have our leadoff hitter.
Hold on. The Reds are up 4-3.
Not ready? Oh, wow.
That was quick. That was fast.
The game just started. Already have all those runs.
4-3, yeah. Crazy.
Was it a grand slam or?
Christian Encarnacion Strand hit a 2-run shot.
All right. Prediction time, leading off, as per usual, our favorite, Mr. Kevin Bahan.
I'm going to go with the Marlins taking 2 out of 3, just a little uncertainty who starts that middle game, and obviously Kodai Senga's a stud. And I'm going to go with Jake Berger as my series MVP. He's been pretty hot as of late. Had a good series against Milwaukee. Hit that 3-run shot. Got to feel good where he's at right now. So, and he had the walk-off against the Mets too. So maybe he brings a little magic there. So we'll take Fish 2 out of 3 and Jake Berger as the MVP.
Mr. Isaac.
I'm going to go with Kevin, say that the Marlins take 2 out of 3. And I think John Birdie will stay hot.
Ooh. Nice. Eli.
I am nervous, uncomfortable about how things are headed, and I have the Mets winning this series again. 2 out of 3 against the Marlins, against somewhat of a reduced Marlins team at this very moment. I think it's going to be a frustrating series loss, but might not be so bad depending on how the other wildcard contenders do in their own series. Brandon Nimmo is my MVP. I think he would have won series MVP last time, but nobody picked him, so I'm going to pick him this time. I think, yet again, he's going to be really productive offensively.
My prediction is solely going based on my position on the super subscribers or the leaderboard. I need to go off on this, so I'm going to go Mets take 2 out of 3, and my MVP is going to be Kodai Senga. Get the complete game shutout. Here's the hard time of Marlins fans that game. I want the Marlins to win, but I'm doing this solely for predictions. And last and certainly not least, internet.
All right, so I'm being confident. Marlins 2 out of 3. And since I'm pretty far down on that leaderboard, me and Eli talked and made a deal that if I get this prediction correct, I win it all. So Garrett Hampson, game 3, top of the 7th, home run, grand slam, that's going to win him the MVP. And if I get that exactly correct, I win.
I'll give it to you. If that happens, exactly, we will just give you the win. We will give you all the points. We will give you
I want it to happen.
Top 7, game 3, grand slam from Garrett Hampson. It's happening.
Oh, game 3. Oh, come on.
All right, I like that. That clinches a playoff berth.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so that's gonna do it for us. Unless anyone has anything else they want to discuss at all. Anything?
That's about it. Yeah, right. We got one more show after this one, and Isaac is going to be yet another real press box report that hopefully is a little bit less awkward than that one. That's no fault of Noah. I just mean the situation. Hopefully that game starts on time with that Pirates series. And certainly, fingers crossed that it is still a meaningful series, that there's still a chance to get in. The fact that this is such a contrast from the final week of last season, that there's still so much at stake for the team. So we appreciate everybody that's followed along for the ride. And every single game, a whole lot of tension going on. And we have very big plans to cover each of these remaining games, as well as any additional games, if we're fortunate to get those, that go beyond the regular season.
All right, that's going to do it for myself.
Isaac, you muted.
Oh,
Sorry, just a reminder for Marlins fans what to look out for tonight. Obviously, the Cincinnati and Cleveland game. Right now, Cincinnati's winning. You have the Chicago Cubs getting started right now against the Atlanta Braves. Go Braves. And you've got the Chicago White Sox going up against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And obviously, go Jose Urania.
Go Jose Urania.
So those are the games to keep an eye out for. And the Marlins, if they just get tied, they're in control of their own destiny. They have the tiebreaker over all of them. So I think arguably they're in the best position of the 4 teams and still in it. All right.
We'll leave you with that. Yeah. Presented by La Pop. This is Jose Urania's favorite podcast, favorite stream. This has been FOF Live, not just presented by Jose Urania, but La Pop. Go Fish.